Alright, we're going to remove the fuel tank from this Kawasaki 1500. A few simple steps, not too bad. I'm going to have to hold the camera to show you, but I've already loosened everything up and got it ready. Like I was saying before, to remove this fuel tank, we have 3 bolts holding the instrument cluster in. 2 here and 1 there. We're going to remove this bolt, which I've already done. The other 2 can remain. Then you take this whole speedometer cluster and you move it forward slightly. And as you move it forward, and I'll tip it up, you can see up underneath here, there's a hook right here. That hook goes into a rubber grommet, as you can see right, I guess you can see it right there, that slotted hole. So when you move that forward. But when you first remove it, you're not going to have much room to work. I mean, you'll have it off of there, and you'll be able to raise it a little bit, but you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. You need to remove the speedometer cable. What I like to use is just a plain Jane pliers to get up under there and loosen the beginning of it. Then I take 2 hands and I just use my fingers here, my other hand over here, and just spin the nut off. And since I already have it removed, I'll show it to you. This is your speedometer cable right here, which has a nut. And that's what I was talking about, using the pliers just to break it loose, and then you can spin that nut off. And I'll show you the bottom of the speedometer where it actually spins, where it actually hooks to, which would be right here. The thing about the speedometer cable is it's actually square. The actual cable is square. So when you reinstall it, you have to make sure that you don't force it in there, that you kind of turn the whole thing a little bit until the cable drops in. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get that nut started, but with 2 hands and a little patience, you can get it started. Once you have that nut removed, then you'll be able to raise it up a little bit higher. Still won't be able to get it all the way off. And as you see here, the wiring, you have 2 plugs. These plugs plug to these 2 plugs. Now, one mistake I made in the past is when I put these wires in, I ran the wires over the top of here and plugged them in. Well, then when the gas tank sat under, they got pinched. So when you reinstall it, it's kind of a pain, but you need to fish the wires up where my fingers are going up underneath to this back side and plug the wires in. But once that's out, those 2 wires are unplugged and that cable, you can pretty much remove this here. It can be set aside somewhere safe where you don't damage it. Now to get the gas tank off. Here's that one hidden bolt I was talking about earlier. I believe it's a 14mm bolt. Take it off. That nut and that rubber should stay there. And then you remove the gas tank. Now on my bike, I actually replaced the screws to remove the seat. There's 2 screws, 1 on each side, 1 here on the other side. I actually got these thumb screws, which are kind of nice because if you're on the side of the road, you want to take maybe you need a jump start or something. It just makes it simpler. You can do it with your fingers. You don't need to get a wrench out. You take those out and the seat will come off. What attaches the front of the seat is this slot here. And that slot fits over this large washer. And that holds the front of the seat. But that's also your other bolt to remove your tank. So you take that out. That'll stay. You can pull it out, but you can just leave it in there. It's got a rubber bushing in there to absorb any vibration. Okay, now that's removed. Then you need to come around, you need to shut your fuel off. And this here, it's in the off position now. This is your fuel line. It's got a little spring clamp on there. You use a pair of pliers. I just got it off with my fingers. A little bit of fuel will drip out of there in the off position, so I have a rag ready, but not much. Maybe a tablespoon of fuel will come out. Now that's unhooked. Now we're ready to remove the tank. As we raise this tank up, I'm going to set this camera over here for a second. The tank should, with the steering wheel straight, should lift up, but we have some more stuff to unhook, as I mentioned before. I have 1 more wire to unhook, which is connected to your speedometer, or to your fuel gauge. I'll set the tank aside and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I previously unhooked this hose and this hose just by reaching my hand up underneath it. Then this has got a spring clip, but my fingers were able to pull it loose. This is that 1 wire for your speedometer. I mean, not your speedometer, for your fuel gauge. your tank's ready to remove. So now the tank's removed. As you can see, to do any servicing on this bike, to get done the valves, requires removal of the engine, because this is your valve cover and this is your frame, and I can't even put my finger in there. So you have to take the motor out to service the valves. So that's done now. So this is kind of a short little video here. I'm going to move on probably to the radiator. We also, according to the book, there's some other stuff that needs to come off, which is also this other side cover. And I believe that some wiring is all hooked up inside underneath this cover here. But we'll get to that. We still have our engine mounts. And it was talking about unhooking a coil pack. And I'm not convinced the coil pack's going to be a problem. It's up in here. There's one coil pack here. And it said remove the fuel filter. But I think maybe what they meant was, when they wanted to remove this coil pack, was maybe because this air box has to come out to give some clearance. So we may still have to do that yet. But we're heading that way. Up here you can see this is the cap for your radiator. When you reinstall this and you fill your radiator up with antifreeze, you need to get all the air out. And that's what this bleeder valve right here is for. Even some vehicles have it nowadays to make sure you get 100% of the air out of there so it circulates properly. But